When I went to elementary school in Africa, I can remember people who were extremely smart. And from that moment onwards, my life turned. You go into something that people consider a scam, like Bitcoin and etc. Are you okay? The problem of the comfort zone makes you blind. What people don't realize in Africa and in emerging markets, when you can't compete, you disrupt. Not everybody can get a $5 million apartment in New York, but if you tokenize that apartment into 1 million token of $5, anybody from their phone in the planet can actually buy a piece of it. As an adolescent, in mid-high school, the principal called my parents and said, okay, you know, your kid shouldn't stay in this school. My mom was a bit nervous because she thought, okay, look, what's wrong with the kid? I mean,
messed up.
You know, and yeah, because I was a bit turbulent. So and the principal said, no, we don't. And she said, you can't fire him. He's top of his class, right? And the principal said, no, we don't want to fire him. He's extremely bored. And you should send him to this special school in Paris where he will be more stimulated and will be in an environment that will actually get him to want to do better instead of kind of... And when I arrived in that school, I was the only black person. Well, let's say I was a minority in that sense. And I had like a mixed reaction to it. First, a lot of pride because I think, I don't know, maybe 2 out of 5 Nobel Prize in France came from that school. So I was like, okay, I'm among the best of the best. And we, you know, and then I had that other sense, which is, okay, I'm very lucky, but it's also unfair, right? Why was it unfair to me? Because when I went to elementary school in Africa, I can remember people who were extremely smart, and some smarter than me, who would never have this chance. And from that moment onwards, my life turned. And I made a promise to myself to ensure that in everything I would do, we can create that equal access to opportunity, regardless to wealth at birth or place at birth. And that's where, when now you go into finance, thinking, okay, I'm going to now use finance to create equal access to opportunities.
You're in the wrong place.
And then actually I was like, oh, okay, it's not exactly what I thought it should be, would be, once I understood the fundamentals. And over my career, I was lucky to work in the top financial institutions in the world. I learned a lot, right? And then I said, okay, the system is not broken, but it needs to evolve. And that's where blockchain came from. And that's where everything took a different turn.
So just tying right back into this, okay, you may not answer this, but again, I just wanted to include this because I wanted this to be a personal chat. So you've said something very striking before, that when you decided to move into blockchain, some people genuinely wondered if you had,
if I've lost the plot.
If you've lost the plot there for a second. So why did it look irrational from the outside? And what did you see that the others didn't see yet?
I mean, it looked irrational for most people who knew me because of the career I had, right? I was, I think in my mid-30s, I was probably one of the youngest executive of GE making investment. Even when I joined IFC World Bank, I was kind of that so-called blue-eyed boy from Africa, promised to a great career, and who would run one of those, big institutions one day. And I took a whole different turn, and they were like, "What's wrong with you?" Right? And not only it took a different turn, it was like, you go into something that people consider a scam, like Bitcoin and etc. Are you okay? And they couldn't see the new world birthing, right? And a new world where, for me, justice would come through, where those two key fundamentals of finance could be disrupted to create a better, more transparent, more empowering system for everyone. Why? Because the problem of the comfort zone makes you blind, right?
Makes you
And
complacent.
and for me, comfort has never been the thing, right? And it was what. But if I couldn't be aligned to what I stood for, I couldn't stay. And because I was lucky to literally for more than a decade, I was making investment in technologies because I know technology was the disruptor. But because I was exposed to those technologies, I knew what difference it made. So I was absolutely confident. I can give you the example. I was in my my early career, right? And we were raising capital to bring GSM to Africa Mobile. And I would look at those I would travel the world, development finance institutions, large investment houses, and they would tell me, you guys don't even have fixed line. How are you thinking mobile? And I said, sorry? And they said, yeah, you need to kind of go step by step, before you fly, you walk kind of story. And for me, I was like, okay, so you're telling me that I need to stay 100 years behind you because I need to take the step and make the mistakes you made so that I can get there? No, right? And the point is that what people don't realize in Africa and in emerging markets, when you can't compete, you disrupt, right? And invention is mother of necessity, or necessity is mother of invention, or invention is mother of necessity.
Yeah, vice versa.
And vice versa. And that's the whole point, right? And that's also the human ingenuity to find solutions with the means they have to be able to advance. And technologies are the very space for leapfrogging, legacy, right? And I told them, okay, fine. And look now, even a few years later, the huge adoption of telecommunications that opened the world to most emerging markets, right? The other thing was within my investments, I was, and that was very interesting. It was, I made the first investment in the world in mobile money, mobile payment, right? And at the time, the reality was simple, the same way as for GSM. It was like, you're not going to be, look, banks have been in Africa and in emerging markets for several centuries. And yet, you're still at 16% banking penetration. It means the whole brick and mortar everywhere doesn't work when you don't have infrastructure, right? So you're going to have to think out of the box for the money to move and for people to receive it. Guess what? That very journey that we did for GSM, for mobile, then why don't we use that, right? And that's how the first project came, and then came M-Pesa and so on. And now, guess what? M-Pesa moves 70% of Kenya's GDP. While in America, they're still writing checks, paper checks, right? So, and for me, because I knew that and I'd been exposed to understanding how technology could be an equalizer, getting into blockchain was a natural evolution into the different phases where I was involved. I was starting my career with, and then the dot-com bubble, right? And then the mobile revolution. Then the next natural shift was leveraging on that technology, and in particular blockchain. Now that most people have internet, right? And they have mobile and so on. Guess what? We can now tackle those two issues.
Yeah.
Collateral. Not everybody can get a $5 million apartment in New York, right? But if you tokenize that apartment, right, into 1 million token, right, of $5, and anybody from their phone in the planet can actually buy a piece of it. Mm-hmm. That's disruption. That's restoring equal access to opportunities, regardless of wealth, regardless of place of birth.